I'm hitting the woods with my ouch bleeper because we've brought Ouch and About inside the hospital.
Wow.
Dr. Xand, Dr. Xand.
And I'm hitting the streets to answer your medical mysteries. In the hospital, Chris is performing a very tricky operation.
Almost there.
A question.
And he's off to see Alex, who's just had an operation on his esophagus.
Hi, Alex. I got your bleep. What's your question?
Why can't you eat or drink before surgery?
What's the diagnosis, Doc?
Sounds like a case of why can't you eat or drink before surgery-itis.
This question's making me hungry.
Well, I think I can answer the question. Before you have any operation, the reason you can't eat is because when you're lying down and when you've had an anaesthetic, you can't cough. And so if food comes back up from your stomach, goes into your windpipe, your trachea, it can then get into your lungs, and that'll be really bad because you can't then breathe and you'll get a pneumonia. Once you had your operation, how long was it before you could eat?
4 hours.
Okay, so what did you eat?
I had 2 rounds of toast and then another 2 rounds, 4 chicken goujons, a couple of chips and a bit of salad. And then after that, I had a yoghurt.
Wow, you must have been super hungry.
You have earned yourself a sticker. I think we should probably try and put it on your esophagus, shouldn't we? Cheers, Alex.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
I'm Ouch and About on the street, and I think someone has a question for me.
Dr. Xand, Dr. Xand, I've got a question.
Oh, Heidi, what's your question?
Well, you know when you do this and you point to a finger without touching it,
OK, try and move this finger. You moved the wrong one.
why can't I lift the right one?
What's happening is your brain is getting 2 different bits of information. If you do that and you look, the visual information that your brain's getting is very confusing. You've just got a whole mess of fingers and you can't tell which one is which. You don't know which finger to send the message to. But if I touch it, that's easy then, right? So if you touch the finger, there's a wire, effectively a nerve, carrying the message exactly to the right bit of your brain, and then your brain knows what to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's a very complicated question, but very important one. Thank you. Back in the hospital, Chris has been bleeped by Amelia.
Hi, Amelia. What's your question?
What is a tracheostomy?
What's the diagnosis, Doc?
Sounds like a classic case of, I want to know what a tracheostomy is, itis.
Well, that's easy for you to say.
Now, why are you interested in what a tracheostomy is?
Because I narrowly avoided getting one. I was in intensive care for about 5 weeks with a really bad lung infection. But on the day when I was supposed to get the tracheostomy, I just started breathing again.
When you were on the intensive care unit, were you on a thing called a ventilator?
Yeah, big tube down my throat.
And it blows air in and out of your lungs. But if you have a tube going through your mouth and into your trachea, your windpipe, for too long, it does a lot of damage.
So doctors can perform something called a tracheostomy.
Now, any ostomy is a hole between an organ and the skin.
So a tracheostomy is
Where there's a hole between the trachea, the windpipe, and the skin. And so if you make a little hole in that, you can put in a tube that someone can then breathe in and out of, or that can be connected to a ventilator. Have I answered your question?
Yes.
I'm going to leave you.
Yeah, I get a sticker.
Is
You can
that
put
all right?
it on the teddy bear.
Teddy can get it. Thanks, Amelia.
Thank you, Dr. Chris.
Cheers, Amelia. Hope you get better soon.
Bye.
job done for today. Clinic closed.
Chris, I wonder how our patient in the emergency department is getting on.
Well, you're in luck, Xand, because this is the bit we get to find out.
Ooh, that's one of my favourite bits.
Earlier, we met Sophie with her cut thumb in A&E. Sophie was in her bedroom doing some arts and crafts when she cut her hand on a sharp knife. Ouch! Because this may have affected the movement of her hand, she's here to see a specialist doctor. Examining the dodgy digit this morning is Dr. Helen Richards.
I believe you've had a little accident. Is it very sore? Worst case scenario, what we'd be looking for is whether she's damaged one of the tendons. There's also a possibility of her injuring one of the nerves.
And that could mean she needs an operation. Dr. Helen checks how Sophie's thumb is moving today.
Right, can you wriggle this little thumb? You can!
Now that it's not so sore, it's much better than yesterday.
So you could move her thumb fully, so that means her tendon's intact. She's not injured any tendons in there, so we don't need to do an operation.
Brilliant.
Phew, that's good news.
And looking at the scratch, it only looks quite superficial.
And Sophie gets a brand new bandage.
You'll be glad to hear we don't need to see you back here again.
Well better.
Great. Bye, Sophie.
Bye, Tab.
Still to come.
Rude noises. Ooh.
See-through swallowing.
You're making an X-ray movie.
And...
My jaw's desiccated again.
hang on, haven't we met this patient before?
Now, did you know your body can produce nearly 2 litres of gas every day?
And this comes out either by burping or farting. And now to our lab, but this time we've hidden it in a top-secret location.
So secret that even Xand doesn't know where it is.
What are you doing? It's time for some amazing experiments. Just don't try anything you see here at home. Today we're finding out what happens when you burp.
Xand, what are you doing? You know that I've expressly forbidden you from burping in the lab.
No, Chris. Today, I am allowed to burp because today's lab is all about burping. Burping is something we all do, no matter who you are, and there's even a medical name for it, eructation. Burping is a very important bodily function.
All burps are made of gas that your body wants to get rid of. It might be because you've swallowed air, because you gobble your lunch too fast like Xand, or it might be carbon dioxide from chemical reactions in your stomach, or from the bubbles in a fizzy drink like this. Now, the rumbling sound of a burp is caused when gas escapes through your esophagus or food pipe. Now, the internet says that the sound actually comes when it passes over a very important body part just here in your throat called the epiglottis. This stops food from going into your windpipe when you swallow. But we don't think that the internet is actually correct. So we want to find out, where does the noise of a burp actually come from, and what would happen if you didn't burp at all?
Let's find out. To show you where a burp comes from, we're going to film an actual burp from the inside.
Pardon you.
Never in all of human history has anyone ever filmed a burp from the inside.
Really? Yes, that really is true. We're going to use a special camera to look down my throat.
But don't you go sticking anything down your throat. We can only do this because we're doctors. Away we go. So now we can see inside Xand's mouth, and then as we go back, you can see the dangly bit at the back of Xand's mouth, the uvula.
And this little flap of tissue here is Xand's epiglottis.
Hello, Xand's epiglottis.
Now keep your eye on the opening of the esophagus.
And there it is, a burp! A world's first, a burp on camera.
As the air burps out, the soft tissue at the top of the esophagus is flapping, while the epiglottis does nothing.
So we have proven burping is not the epiglottis flapping, it's the soft tissues at the top of the esophagus.
Take that, Internet! You're wrong. But we're not stopping there. Remember, burping is a perfectly natural body function, although it's not polite to burp loudly like Xand is doing in this experiment. But what would happen if you didn't burp at all?
Well, Chris, put these on and I'll show you.
Because I am about to introduce you to a fearsome new machine. Meet Dr. Xand's amazing eructation machines. Ta-da! Well, show me how it works.
Here we have kitchen vinegar. We're going to take this and pour it through here. Now, in the model, this bit represents the back of your throat, and the food is going to flow down the esophagus, the food pipe, into our stomachs. These balloons contain bicarbonate of soda, which will react with the vinegar and produce gas, and we will get burping.
So how does it work?
Let me show you. The liquid goes down the throat into the esophagus, and this is what happens when you drink. Your esophagus fills up. We close that valve at the top, which is what happens when you swallow, and then we open this valve, the esophageal sphincter, and we let the food into the stomach. And then we can see it already, gas bubbling up, the chemicals in the food reacting with the chemicals in the stomach. You can feel a bit of rumbling. You can feel a burp coming. You relax this valve at the top, which is the cricopharyngeus muscle, and... Ooh. That is excellent. But you asked me what would happen if you couldn't burp, and now we're about to find out. So get your vinegar and pour it in the top. Now, let the food into the stomach.
We can see the gas.
Gas is coming out of the stomach, but it can't escape the closed valve at the top of the esophagus. If you can't burp, it means that none of the gas can escape upwards, and so it builds up in the stomach. You would be getting very uncomfortable right now if that was your real stomach.
Xand, I'm going to add more blue vinegar. Chris, it wasn't designed to withstand this kind of pressure.
More gas means more pressure.
Here he goes.
Oh, Xand.
Oh, here we go. It's gonna go.
Ah! Wow! That was amazing.
So we've shown you where the burping noise comes from and how important burps are for getting rid of unwanted gases.
Now, my fake stomach here has exploded, but don't worry, if you don't burp, you won't actually explode. You might feel a bit bloated and uncomfortable, but eventually the gas goes through your intestines and you pass it out the other end.
Ouch. Come on, temperature, temperature. I need my temperature.
Xand, what are you doing?
I'm trying to get this little car to take my temperature.
I can see that, but why?
Haven't you heard? There's this whole new system. Patients are using Formula One car technology to monitor their vital signs.
Yes, Xand, I have heard of this, and it is true, patients are getting their vital signs monitored by Formula One race car technology, but this is obviously not how it works.
You're right. I need a real car.
Sounds like a case for investigation, ouch.
It seems totally bizarre that taking a patient's vital signs could be helped by a car. So I'm heading off in the fast lane to meet the motors.
And I'm starting with a pit stop on the wards to meet Matt, who's just had a heart operation.
You've got a lot of different monitoring going on here at the moment. Can we see how many wires are on your chest?
Matt is wired up to a monitor to check his vital signs. Vital signs are important bits of information about a patient, such as oxygen levels and heart rate.
Are you allowed to unplug yourself at all?
What I have to do is I have to get my nurse. They will take this off.
Doctors and nurses write down Matt's vitals by hand on a chart. This system's time-consuming for the staff and, more importantly, uncomfortable for Matt.
So, at the moment for you, basically, leaving the bed is a real hassle.
Yeah.
Chris, this is where the cars come in. In Formula One, monitoring systems have gone up a gear. This is Dr. Adam Hill. He's the Chief Medical Officer at McLaren and works out how Formula One technology can be used in hospitals. What a cool job. So how much is a Formula One car like a human being?
Well, Formula One cars are incredibly complex devices. They have an engine, a bit like our heart. They have a need to breathe, a bit like our lungs, and they're incredibly intelligent.
Oh, just like me. And the healthier the car, the faster it goes. So just like a patient, its vital signs are monitored.
We use little gadgets like this that collect information at up to 960,000 times every single second from a single sensor.
Wow, that is amazing. The F1 system is wireless, efficient, and fast. If only the hospital had something like this.
Well, Dr. Adam has worked with Birmingham Children's Hospital to create a new system. It's a world first. It's brand new, and I'm gonna try it out.
Alex, that's it now.
That's it now.
It's flashing.
It's flashing, it's working.
It's sending the signal to the monitor.
Yeah.
It has one sensor doing the same job as the 6 that Matt is hooked up to. The results are instantly available on the computer monitor. Bye-bye charts. Plus, it's wireless. I can walk anywhere. Even do a few press-ups if I like.
You're doing very well, Chris.
All this time, it's recording my vital signs.
Perfect.
And then I can download my results when I get back. Even though I was jumping at the other end of the hospital, the computer knows what I've been up to.
Well, the hope is that children will be able to go home with this system and they will be able to take one of these tablets with them so we can log on from the hospital and see what's happening in their homes.
This would be life-changing for patients like Matt.
How much easier would you find it if you could just wear that new monitor?
A lot. Seriously, I would lose a lot of these wires. It's more compact, and that monitor takes 60 seconds to monitor your heart. The other one monitors it every second. And I think it'll be great for the future. And then hopefully other kids will find it a lot easier in hospital.
Thanks, Matt. Who would have thought that hospitals can learn stuff from a car?